Welcome to the very first installment of On the Brink with Jeff Wefferson. I'm standing outside recording myself here in beautiful Western Victoria, Australia, early December 2012, the year of our Lord, whoever that might be, Obama. Wanted to record this initial greeting from standing outside here just before dark so you can get a taste of the acoustic ambience of how many birds there are here. So many different kinds of parrots. And you might hear some wind. I'm looking at the clouds below over now, which is of course not coming through in this audio. But it's a fantastic place, and soon we'll go back inside to the fireside chat room and actually record the main body of this installment. But for now, listen to these birds. Alright, so here we are now back inside. I won't exactly call this a studio space, but it's a nice little house where I've been staying for a while. You might hear the sound of the crackling fire because even though this is late spring, it's actually been quite chilly here the past couple of days. I guess that must be due to global warming. It's been chilly enough to have a fire to try to keep warm, but of course my room here is missing the glass in one of the windows, so the wind might blow through. You might still hear some birds, some wind, possibly an occasional traffic unit go by, but hopefully the noise from that will be subsiding. It's the first time I've ever had my own radio show. I've done a few radio interviews over the years, and in this year, calendar year 2012, I've probably done, I don't know, getting close to a couple of dozen radio interviews, mainly dealing with really serious issues affecting all of humanity and life as we know it here on beautiful mothership Earth, which, as far as I know, it's the only planet we know that has life. That's sort of the framework for everything that we experience in our lives now, is the fact that it's all happening on this one planet. Our consensus reality of the universe is that it's much bigger than just the Earth, and we know of other planets and stars, and scientists think they know of star systems with planets, but we don't know much about these worlds. We don't know if they harbor life as we know it. I think it's a safe assumption to operate on that Mother Earth is the only planet we know that has life, at least life as we know it, which is what we are. So it sort of lends a sense of urgency to the extremely dangerous situations that are being created by human industrial activity running way out of control, really ever since the dawn of what we call civilization, which literally means living in cities. Anyway, I'm deviating from the introduction. I wanted to thank all the people at UCY TV, Jules, who's the owner, operator, wonderful, wonderful person, Christina Consolo and Daniel Eelbode, both of whom do shows on here. Thank them for having me on their shows, which are also on UCY. This really all started, connecting up with these guys, was a few weeks ago when in one of my internet blogs I reported some partial misinformation about something that happened at Fukushima. And Alex Jones labeled it as a hoax, which was bullshit. And I'll say that again, bullshit, because I can. But anyway, it only led to a bunch of really good things happening, including a lot of elevated publicity for me and the work that I do. So here I am with my very own radio show, On the Brink with Jeff Wefferson. So now I'll tell you about why is it called On the Brink. The Brink is the name that I've used for myself in musical form ever since I first started recording music in the mid-1980s. So the first real recording I did in a multi-track studio was a couple of songs. One of them was called Infotoxin, which was a techno rap piss take about advertising and mediocrity in pop music. I was living in Athens, Georgia at that time, and REM was just becoming really big. And a lot of people liked them, but they never did that much for me, but they were sort of, to me, the paragons of mediocrity that was being amplified to fill this massive consumer slot. Nothing against REM. But anyway, the Brink. I've always had a sense of that humanity is living on the edge. And I think, in fact, we are living on the edge of a lot of things. And it's a good place to be, because the edge, the borders between regions, or the edges of surfaces, topologically speaking and geometrically speaking, they're very interesting, because it's the region where two different systems or coordinate reference frames meet and interact. Like the seashore is the edge of the land and the sea where they both meet. So the seashore is actually a region that's unique because of these properties. And if you think of the Brink, the concept of the Brink, like in most people's mind, it probably connotes the brink of doom, the brink of disaster, heavy things like that with a negative spin on it. But to me, the Brink, like you're standing on the brink of a cliff. You don't have to fall off, but you can stand and look over it. The Brink is sort of like the concept of a horizon. Like when you're driving down the road or standing in a flat desert area, you look out and see the horizon. The horizon is the edge or the limit of your perception or vision. It's sort of a function of your perception, though, because as you move, the horizon moves. So it's not an absolute delineation or a marking point, but it's actually a projection of the limit of what we can perceive. That's a very central concept to this whole show, On the Brink, because it'll all relate back. The central concept in everything that humans do is our psychology, individually and collectively, because every second of every minute of every hour of every day of every week of every year, we're using our own internal psychology to think, feel, and experience and remember every single thing that constitutes the whole tapestry of our lives. Comes to us through our psychology, because that's the way we perceive it. We perceive reality, we actively construct it. It's a much more active process than most people give themselves credit for. That's why we're all artists. This is another topic that will permeate the On the Brink series here. The immense creativity that each of us has and the subsequent responsibility that goes along with that. The Brink. We are on the brink, but of what? No one knows. It depends on the reference frame that you're looking at it from. I would say that it appears that human industrial civilization is on the brink of collapse, and that's a big sort of trendy word these days, collapse, the collapse syndrome. There may be a new science called collapsology, just like Al Gore founded the School of Climatology, which we know that's sure there's a science of climatology. Very interesting. So many cool things to talk about on this show. First, I'll tell you a little background about myself. I'm originally from the planet Thalion in the Arcturan star system, but this is off the record. In this life on this planet, I'm a native of the Carolinas in the eastern part of the USA, North America. Was basically your science nerd in high school, made all A's, first in my class, sort of socially incompetent. Then I went to college and was going to be an astronomer until I learned that astronomers don't really look at stars. They do math and work on computers and stuff. And so I go like, well, I want to look at the stars. So I then became interested in the brain and mind and neurobiology and psychology. Became very influenced by the writings of a scientist named Dr. John C. Lilly, who my physics lab instructor turned me on to. Read Dr. Lilly's work and felt a tremendous calling to become involved with his dolphin communication work that was going on in California. So a few years later, I moved out there and got involved with his dolphin communication group. And I was never a full-time person there, and nobody got paid. But I was there enough. They let me swim with the dolphins and play some recorded music to them within the first month that they were there, when they were still really fresh and everybody was still really cool and stuff. That was a mind-blowing experience because it had a big effect on me, because when I played the Dolphins this recorded music, it was some Pat Metheny and Ralph Towner. It was through their computer system that Lily had devised that raised the frequency level of the sound up into a higher frequency level so the dolphins could hear it a lot better, and it was underwater. So I went in to swim with the dolphins, Joe and Rosie, and they turned the music on. As soon as they turned the music on, the dolphins stopped what they were doing. They had been frolicking around and playing with me and stuff, and they stopped, and they just started floating there with this totally blissful look in their eyes, as if they were feeling the music with their whole body. And I could sort of hear it under the water, but it was an amazing experience to see how much that because they had never heard anything like that before, especially not being played to them underwater with high-quality hydrophones at a frequency level they could hear. So it was like a really interesting. I was probably the first person to play pre-recorded jazz music to cetaceans at their own frequency level, and I think it was a historical point also in my own life, because from then on I became extremely aware of who these beings really are, and it's been an ongoing passion of mine ever since then to sort of be a carrier of their message, which we've sort of decoded it, if you might want to use that term. We've decoded the message of the whales and dolphins to us as humans right now, and it's not anything particularly cosmic, even though I think that they have access to a tremendous amount of cosmic awareness and knowledge and stuff that we can't even imagine. But their message to us right now is something very simple, very clear, very profound. Live simply so that others may simply live. Because if you look at what humanity is, one out of billions of species of life on this planet, we're the only ones that are running amok. We're destroying everything through the abuse of our most advanced technologies, our ignorance, our stupidity, our greed, our apathy. And but it's not our human nature that's bad. It's certainly not our biology. And this is another big issue that I'll be bringing up from time to time on this show, because it's very central to the whole human process right now. It's not our biology that's the problem, it's our mentality. And it's not the mentality of everyone, but it's the mentality of the majority of people in mainstream society, particularly in the age of mass communication, where artificial reality can be shared at the speed of light from the one to the many instantaneously everywhere, especially in the age of not only television and radio, but iPhones and other smart devices like that people these days can't put down. They can't turn it off. They can't get it out of their face. And to me, this is a scary predecessor to what I believe is going to be a large-scale move to implement implanted electronic microchips in the human population, probably starting next year under Obama 2.0. Another scary thing to watch out for, and people won't be forced to take it. They'll voluntarily accept it, because it's going to make things so convenient. You're going to have your money on there. You're going to have your social networking data on there. You're going to have your whole iTunes cloud. It can be in your microchip, or it can tune into the cloud for you, and you can listen to stereophonic music inside your head that'll sound better than any speakers. This is what's going to happen, and people are going to want it. But after you've got it in there, who can take it out? Who can turn it off? What happens when it starts coming on and you don't want it on, and these voices are there telling you what to do? Adverts for Coca-Cola coming into your brain when you're trying to sleep. Adverts for the next presidential election, where Hillary Clinton's going to run for president of the galaxy against Zaphod Beeblebrox. all this stuff. No telling what could come in there. So don't bend over for your microchip yet. So anyway, after I quit college, when my self-education process really began, I have constantly educated myself in very many disciplines of science and different areas of things that really make sense and that seem important to know about. A lot of philosophical stuff, cosmic stuff, a lot of science of various areas, and I've read widely and tried to network and be and communicate with and actually meet a lot of top minds that are doing work that I consider to be very relevant to being here now as a human being. But at the time I quit college, I sort of decided that I wanted to work equally in words, visuals, and music. Writing, painting, photography, playing music, guitar and piano. So I do all of these things. And for the past 5 years, I've had the wonderful pleasure of being partners with the most beautiful, talented girl that I've ever met on this planet, Elizabeth Verstraeten. And we've sort of formed the ultimate creative partnership in which we do many things together. But she has a degree in filmmaking, and we've made 4 films and a trailer to our Beyond film about the whales and dolphins so far. I see filmmaking as one of the central things that I'm pursuing right now. We're working on this Beyond film about the whales and dolphins that'll sort of bring together all of our most advanced creativity in order to not only tell everyone about who we think the whales and dolphins really are as fellow sentient beings on this planet, but also what the real threats to them are from human activity. And these are not the threats from Japanese whalers or fishermen. That is barbaric, of course, as the Sea Shepherd and Louis Sai Hoyos of the Cove will be glad to tell you, after they've taken all your donations, of course. But the real threats that are global in nature are threats from, for example, the seismic testing for hydrocarbon exploration, of which there's many hundreds of those vessels in operation around the world at any given time, and the threats from different types of sonar and other military technologies that the U.S. Navy and other navies use, deployed around the world in conflict and war games and testing, all different kind of things. And so you'll be hearing a lot about the whales and dolphins on this show, especially in New Zealand, a place where I've spent a lot of time over the years. New Zealand, according to my friend at Stranded No More, which is probably one of the top sources of information about the whales and dolphins. You can find their webpage on Facebook, Stranded No More. New Zealand has more strandings of whales and dolphins than just about anywhere in the world in recent years. And they've got a really bad record for their ability to try to deal with them successfully. So New Zealand is kind of the focus of a lot of cetacean activism right now. The whales and dolphins are probably the masters of sound on this whole planet. They use echolocation like bats and moths, but they've also got several systems of sound that can operate simultaneously. I think that they're probably the most advanced musicians on the planet in terms of a true definition of music. Speaking of music, the show probably won't always be just talking, because as my motto of the 90s or even the 2000s, the aughts, my motto for decades has been, talk is for dictators. Act now to create a world you love. The whales and dolphins are masters of sound. They communicate extremely high levels of information density and complexity, far beyond what we do. But it's inaccurate to say that they use language, because language comes from the word for tongue, meaning that you use your tongue to communicate. They don't use their tongue for communicating. They project the sound out through their head, and they go to great lengths to imitate human speech through their blowhole. It would be like us trying to talk through our nose. So they're very talented, but this show is not going to be all just talking, because talking really only means something to people that understand your language, which isn't everyone, and that understand what you mean by the words you say, but it's purely human. Language, human language, means basically nothing to any other species. They might hear it, and who knows what it sounds like to them. They might experience the effects of our language, like when someone gives an order for people to go and chop down that forest. The forest and all the living beings in there have felt the effect of that linguistic communication. So the whole natural world is bearing the brunt of what humans are doing with language. It's our sort of operating system for destruction. Language is a very powerful tool, but it's also severely limited, especially your symbolic Western Indo-European languages like English. It's more of a map of reality. It is a reality in itself, but it's not the reality that it's used to communicate about, unless you're using language to talk about itself, which I'm doing right now, in a self-reflexive kind of way. The linguist Korzybski said that the map is not the territory, and that's a very important insight, because we often act as if we're confusing the map with the territory. Anyway, that's a subject for another show. Linguistics, the use of language and other non-linguistic forms of communication, non-human intelligence, extraterrestrial intelligence, which would include the whales and dolphins, because extraterrestrial doesn't mean that you're not from the earth. It means that you're just not from land. So I'm actually going to play a little song on the guitar here in honor of not talking all the time on this show.
Yeah, hey, yeah, hey, yeah, yeah, hey, yeah, hey, yeah, yeah, hey, yeah, hey, yeah. You see what TV, you see what TV. Tune in to you see what TV. Yeah, hey, yeah, hey, you see what TV. Hey.
In recent months and years, in addition to doing a lot of radio interviews, I've also had articles in at least 2 different internationally distributed magazines. One of them is called Uncensored Magazine, which is based in Auckland. The editor, John Eisen, I've been in touch with for a few years, and he's a really good dude. We haven't actually met, but I'd like to thank him for all his great work and for publishing articles of mine in 3 out of the last 4 issues. I missed out on this last issue, but the issue coming out in the beginning of 2013 is going to actually have distribution in the USA, which is going to mean probably quite a few tens of thousands of more copies published. And so I'm going to have a slot in there. And I'd also like to extend my thanks to Star Shields, the editor of the recently rejuvenated Oracle magazine that was originally from the Bay Area in the late 1960s. A really cool, larger format magazine with a lot of psychedelic art. And last year they decided to resurrect it and invited Lisbeth and I to contribute art and writing. And they liked what we did so much that they gave us the central slot in the magazine with 3 pages of text and art, and have invited us back to have a presence in all of the upcoming issues, which he's projecting to have 4 issues come out in 2013. The article that I'm working on for the next issue, it's based on the Central Hopi prophecy that we talked about on the Night Watch show over the past couple of weeks, which I think is extremely central to the whole nature of civilization and what the root of a lot of our problems are ecologically and environmentally, spiritually. It's the prophecy portrayed very clearly in the film Koyaanisqatsi. If we dig precious things from the land, we will invite disaster. This is another subject for an entire show. But I'm writing an article about this that'll be the centerpiece of the next issue of Oracle magazine. And it's also going to have a lot more of Lisbeth's art in there too. I'd also like to thank Jacob at the Noos Foundation, which is founded by Jose Arguelles. He put together a really fantastic feature on the art and writing and creativity of Lisbeth and me in their newsletter from a couple of months ago, and that turned out really good too. Later on, I'll tell what all of our blogs and websites are. I'm guessing that this radio show will probably be archived on YouTube as a video that might have visuals, and if these visuals happen, then I can include the URLs for all of our sites and pictures of art, different things like that. The article that we wrote for the current issue of Oracle, it's called The Beauty and Power of Being Here Now. It's an article I wrote that expresses sort of Lisbeth and mine's philosophy of being here now. But it's sort of like my message to humanity. Were I able to deliver it to everyone, this is what I would say. And I think it's so concise and so important that I'm actually going to read it right now. It might take a while, but it's probably, I wrote it myself, so it's just as good as listening to me talk off the top of my head. The beauty and power of being here now. Many cosmic thanks to Star and the producers of Oracle for carrying the torch and for including us here. Lisbeth and I are an integrated creative unit. Between us, we work equally in words, visuals, music, still photography, filmmaking, information, activism, gardening, and cooking, all of which are balanced as aspects of our in-dimensional approach to being here now as human beings. To us, it's all about being on our highest spiritual paths, sharing our creative output with our friends everywhere, creating awareness of the beauty and power of nature, but also the damage being inflicted on Mother Earth and all her children by Homo sapiens, i.e., man the wise. Ultimately, through all we do, we try to inspire people to love life, to live simply so that others may simply live, and to put to good use the immense creativity with which we've all been blessed. We do not subscribe to the commonly held belief that someone else is to blame for what is going wrong in the world today. Au contraire, we hold that all of us as human beings are responsible for what our species is manifesting on this planet, and that everything each of us thinks, intends, and makes real does in fact matter. Collectively, humans are creating the vast array of problems besetting the world. At any point, the sooner the better, we can each choose a path of conscious renavigation, perform a critical analysis of our current MOE, or mental operating environment, bring our self-reprogramming abilities online to remold our patterns of thinking and acting into new ways of living that are less contradictory and more coherent, less destructive and in greater harmony with our own well-being as well as that of Mitikaye Oyasin, Lakota for all my relations. Many people tell us they wish they could be an artist. I always reply, you are. Think about it. Every millisecond your internal technology, is making vast numbers of decisions and computations, performing vast numbers of biological, biochemical, and physiological processes. Your organs, muscles, blood, and mitochondria all in real time so that you are able to function as the driver of your human vehicle for whatever goals you wish to pursue. This is an immensely powerful realization. In fact, I can't think of any realization that could be more empowering. Each of us is an astronomically talented artist endowed with the ultimate technology, our very own biopsychological nature, which is part of the web of life of Gaia. Each of us is creating who and what we are every second of every day. We each are therefore responsible for who and what we are or aren't, as well as the consequences of what we do and don't do, what we believe and participate in, what we give our energy and attention to. The universe, in her infinite love, is calling on us to use our sacred gift in ways that benefit life. Being a true artist is really about understanding the meanings of creativity. And art isn't just about creating pretty pictures. It's about the responsible and spiritual application of our creativity, which I believe to be the true spark of divinity within each of us. Indeed, at the quantum relativistic level of morphogenetic holo movement, we are creating our own reality in a far more active way than most people tend to think. The crucial issue of existing in today's world is that people as a whole have been asleep at the wheel for so long that tiny but highly motivated subsets or psychic factions have arisen within our ranks who have generously offered to do our creating for us, since we have been reluctant to do it for ourselves. Hence the New World Order and the full spectrum of war on life, the earth, independent thought, and our continued existence in current forms. Rather than defining them as evildoers and validating the hallucination of our Asaisha, which is an acronym I made up for our emergent projected psychic shadow, we can choose to own our collective responsibility and look at these elite factions merely as teachers of a sort whose karma has allowed themselves to be cast in roles of planetary dictators and authoritarian technocrats. Their purpose? To give us the surrogate reality we seem to be demanding through our refusal to create our own. I see it as a kind of collective shamanic initiation for our species. In ancient and indigenous cultures, half-assed or somewhat capable just wasn't good enough for the prospective carriers of the torch, seeds, and cosmological wisdom. If humans as a whole don't pass this very real test we are creating for ourselves, if we fail to muster a reverberating wake-up call, take the helm and seize the day to understand our true spiritual legacy as co-creators and to re-navigate our current course towards oblivion, it's entirely possible that these elite factions might just get their way. Do you really want your children to be hobbling around with mutated DNA, microchips, and bionic body parts on a planet where life as we currently know her is no more than a distant memory recorded in digital memory banks? I kid you not, every hour that passes by, this horrific reality is becoming more and more probable. Once we remove the lead weight from incoherencies plaguing our day-to-day routines, the pathology of normalcy, then we will be free actually to use our full-spectrum creativity in the kinds of ways it was intended to be used. What will you do as an artist? Guess what? You can do anything you want because you have infinite creativity. That's infinite creativity. Our own personal creativity spans many dimensions. What you are seeing here in Oracle are a few examples of painting and photography, as well as what I consider to be the most important piece of art I've ever done, the ultimate technology, which is a conceptual spacecraft control panel for your brain. Our art has a lot more in common with the sacred art of ancient indigenous cultures than with Western ornamental art. Ours is not about ending up with artifacts to sell, but in honoring and maintaining the sacred process and shamanic spirit of creativity. People see a lot of Aboriginal influence in our art. This is because of our deep and long-standing connection with the land and people of the Australian Dreamtime, whose cosmology and spirituality reflect the longest-standing connection with the forces of life on our planet and beyond of any human culture. Interestingly, their worldviews are interwoven with those of the cetaceans, the whales and dolphins, who are our biggest heroes. As far as Lisbon and I are concerned, we are on their planet. Ever since I was involved with Dr. John C. Lilly's Dolphin Communication Group in California, I've been a bearer of their message, which is, in essence, everything I've just written in this article. As I see it, they are the ultimate indigenous people and are a true extraterrestrial intelligence who have inhabited Earth's aquasphere tens of millions of years longer than we have existed, and with no negative impacts or consequences for their fellow beings or planet. Because they have more highly evolved internal technology than we do, it's clear to me that they possess powers of thought, awareness, and creativity far in advance of ours. Their reality encompasses many more dimensions than does ours. Together, Lisbon and I have painted over 40,000 rocks, over 1,000 paintings, and made 4 films. We play music together, and I've recorded several CDs of experimental and improvisational music with a variety of friends, as well as doing the soundtracks for our films. As I write this now, we are embarking on our most advanced creative project to date, a beyond film about the whales and dolphins that's not only about who they are as fellow sentient beings on Gaia, but also about the grave threats to their well-being and even existence posed by human activity. Activities done by us, not an evil them. This project will bring together the very best of our creativity in every possible dimension, will be at least as much about sound as anything we can see with light, and will explore a true synergy of consciousness in which they are light years ahead. The cetaceans quite possibly hold the key to our own long-term survival and advancement as a species if we can somehow manage to surpass the hurdles of our own limitations so that we can actually hear and understand their message. Now is the time to wake up and give having a life your best effort. No prophet or visionary knows for sure what is going to happen, but the prospects are indeed grim if we fail as a whole to remember, reorient, reprogram, and renavigate. If we do heal our species' karma and get a grip on our lessons of reality creation, the possibilities are limitless, but extinction is forever. I will close with a paraphrase of a statement that JFK made. Ask not what your planet can do for you, but what you can do or stop doing for your planet. Now I'll tell you a little more about the various dimensions of our, what you might call, information activism. I'll describe our various forms of web presence or presence on the internet. Our main site, and I won't actually read the exact details of the URL for each of these. I'll just say the name of it, but hopefully we'll put the URL up on the video. Our main website is called dolphinmatrix.com/Jeff, with a J with a capital F. And I'd really like to thank our friend Douglas Webster in Hawaii, who makes this possible. Dolphin Matrix is his main site, and he is a very interesting person in his own right. You should check it out. He's done a lot of work with the cetaceans over recent decades. He's got a page for various different artists who he likes, of whom I am one, and Elizabeth is on there too. So if you look at our Dolphin Matrix website, you'll see sort of highlights of a lot of our visual art. You can watch one of our films, To Why Dreaming, which is a 20-minute long film consisting of footage of water filmed in northern Australia, along with original music that I did, and an interesting tourist sequence in the middle there. On Dolphin Matrix, you can also check out, there's a list of links to all our other blogs and websites over at the right-hand side. So that's probably the central best place to start to get acquainted with what we do and connect with everything else. Then I've got several other blogs dealing with various extremely relevant real-world issues. And as of now, early December 2012, these next 4 blogs that I'll tell you about are each of them is over the 30,000 hit mark, which I think is pretty good. If you add them all up, that's probably about 150,000 views for someone like myself that just does all this as a labor of love. I think that's actually reaching quite a few people. With my internet emailing system, I've got the ability to send, like when I send out a posting, it probably goes to approximately 2,500 or 3,000 people all at once, well, within a span of about 15 or 20 minutes. And of course, probably a significant proportion of those email addresses might not work anymore, but it's reaching a pretty good amount of people. So I don't consider myself to be a blogger. I'm an artist, but I do all this as a labor of love, just like I'm doing this radio show now, to try to get the word out there about stuff that matters, because even if only a handful of people are listening to this, the world I live in runs on the qualitative dimensions rather than the quantitative. I'm not interested in reaching 1 million people with some little doodah. I'd rather reach even one person, a friend, with something that actually makes an impression and makes a difference in a positive way. So it's all about, to me, the whole thing, everything's about quality, not quantity. Our world is obsessed with quantity. Like there can't be enough zeros on stuff today. Whether you're talking about the amount of money that the bankers have created and then stolen from themselves, which is really what it is. They're stealing the money from themselves, or the number of quantities of radionuclides coming out of Fukushima. There's not enough zeros. In fact, I even made up a word, a form of mental disorder, diseases of the New World Order. Macrophilia. It's an obsession with everything that everything's got to be huge. Macrophilia. It's meant to sound sort of like necrophilia, which is contrary to popular belief. Necrophilia is not the urge to have sex with dead bodies, but it's a psychological attitude of where people love things that aren't alive. Like if people that love their car, that talk to it and wash it all the time, or people that are obsessed with their iPhones, people that spend more time and energy on things that aren't alive, like machines. That's sort of what psychologist Erich Fromm defined as necrophilia, and he described a form of personality disorder that's only possible in a world of fully blown capitalism. He called it the marketing character, as an expression of the necrophilus personality. Probably one of my most well-known blogs, it's called Rachel's Carson of Today, which I created this on Great Barrier Island in 2009 after becoming acutely aware of the problem of the deployment of this deadly pesticide called 1080. New Zealand uses 85% of all that's manufactured in the world annually, and it contributes to New Zealand having the highest per capita use of pesticide of any country in the world. They're 100% clean and green. It's not their image, it's just their adverts that they project. Even John Key came out a week or so ago and admitted that it's just like a McDonald's advertisement or advert. Rachel's Carson of Today. Check that out. It's got a lot of... Rachel Carson is one of my biggest heroes. As you probably know, she was the author of a landmark book called Silent Spring that came out in 1963 that sort of described the whole scenario of these really deadly pesticides that were killing everything, that were a product of the organic chemistry revolution spawned by World War II. Very, very important book. It talks about how mutagens like radionuclides and pesticides damage our DNA and create cancer. It's a very important book to read today. Rachel Carson. And a lot of the stuff on this blog is by different women. For example, Lorraine Murray, Claudia von Werloff, Dr. Rosalie Bertel, who passed away in June, Elia Perlingieri, other different, maybe Dr. Helen Caldecott could be one. Women who are doing enormous services to humanity through their awareness and educational work. Okay, another blog is called Tutunui Wananga, which is supposed to mean the personification of the knowledge of whales. And I got that word, Tutunui, off the internet quite a few years ago, and I haven't been able to verify that that's what it really means, but I've just stuck with it. Wananga in Maori does mean knowledge. So anyway, Tutunui Wananga is all about the whales and dolphins, not only who they are as fellow sentient beings, but there's a lot of stuff on there about the real-world threats to them, like the U.S. Navy and the big oil companies and all their activities. And so that's a very important blog to check out. Then I've got Geoterrorism. This blog was born after the Christchurch earthquake and the Fukushima scenario last year. It's all about the new paradigm of clandestine environmental warfare being fought, disguised as natural disasters or industrial accidents, but they're actually really done on purpose, usually using the new generation of Tesla-based microwave weapons like HARP. Very important blog to check out. Another one is called Renavigating the Human Process. To me, this is the central thing that we have to do. We've got to renavigate our whole process. We've got to reprogram our whole, what I call our DMOE, our distributed mental operating environment, which is our whole sort of psychic reality, our whole worldview, all the summation of all our most fundamental beliefs, attitudes, values, knowledge, what we consider to be quote-unquote wisdom. And this brings up another problem. It's not that we don't know what to do. It's just actually bringing ourselves to actually do it. Like, how many people can go like, yeah, we need to do this, we need to do that, we need to stop eating meat or maybe stop driving so much. But everybody can say it. They can wag their lips. But when it comes to actually doing it, or a lot of what we should actually be doing now is actually stopping doing a lot of the stuff that we're doing. I think if people just actually stopped doing everything that they're doing except for breathing and just like sat in their house all day, that would probably bring a lot of our destructive activities to a grinding halt. Global radiological catastrophe. I believe that's on WordPress. This is a blog that's devoted entirely to the global radiological scenario. It doesn't have all that many articles on there, but the ones that are on there are very much to the point in the sense of since Fukushima, like ever since I was at Big Mountain on the Hopi Navajo Reservation in April of 1986, learning about the Hopi prophecies and walking around with a Geiger counter measuring the radiation in the rocks, I was there when the Chernobyl meltdown happened, which was really a freaky synchronicity in my life. Ever since then, I've tried to keep the whole nuclear awareness thing on people's radar, keeping alive the whole issue of depleted uranium. I got to meet Dr. Carl Sagan once. Had nothing to do with the radiation thing. It was part of a radio astronomy search for extraterrestrial intelligence gathering in October of 1992. But he was a pretty outspoken anti-nuclear activist. Being an astronomer, he realized the gravity of the situation of what all things nuclear meant for life on this planet. And Fukushima's just sort of all taken all of that to the next level. Fukushima is an ongoing process that's just getting worse. It is by many orders of magnitude the worst environmental and ecological catastrophe in the history of human civilization. And I don't think there's any doubt about that. One of my most important websites, it's called regainyourbrain.org. It's all about the psychology of mass communication, the weaponization of mass communication, about the dynamics of our mental and information environment. It's been up since 2004, and you can watch a really cool documentary on there called The Tube by our friend Peter Intel in Switzerland. It's a documentary about the physiology of television. But I'd like to read a quote from Albert Einstein that's actually on the main page of this website. This sort of sums up the whole thing. The scientist of today is distressed by the fact that the results of his scientific work have created a threat to mankind, since they have fallen into the hands of morally blind exponents of political power. He is conscious of the fact that technological methods made possible by his work have led to a concentration of economic and also of political power in the hands of small minorities, which have come to dominate completely the lives of the masses of people who appear more and more amorphous. But even worse, the concentration of economic and political power has not only made the man of science dependent economically, it also threatens his independence from within. The shrewd methods of intellectual and psychic influences which it brings to bear will prevent the development of independent personalities. Albert Einstein, from the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientist, 1952. The shrewd methods of intellectual influence and psychic influence that will prevent the development of independent personalities, you can see that everywhere in the world. That's what television has done. It's sort of colonized our eye and cloned our mind. And people are all becoming very much alike in the sense of what the contents of their mind, because they're sort of uncritical assimilators of that which artificial reality is sort of spoon-fed into their mouth, rather than questioning it and critically analyzing it. Anyway, these are things that Regain Your Brain is all about, because you can't really fully use your ultimate technology until you've regained your brain back from the powers that be that have been trying to steal it from you for many, many decades. I've also got Regain Your Brain Blogspot, which is sort of some more kind of recent postings that go along with Regain Your Brain. A lot of there's a brilliant new documentary film called Resonance that I highly recommend everybody watch. Resonance by James Russell is the director. He sent me the link last week, and I made a really good blog posting about it. It's a really good film about what microwaves are, the history of our understanding of electromagnetic radiation, their effects and negative health effects on living things across the spectrum, and then it focuses on the particular human health hazard, the epidemic of eye and brain cancer, gliomas that are forming because of people cooking their brain with a microwave oven next to their head, and a look at the global telecommunications industry. Very, very, very big problem. There's 4 or 5 billion people now using mobile phones, over 5 million transmission masts, and this is just for the telephone technology. We're not even adding in the Gwen towers or HARP or all the other microwave transmissions from military stuff, industrial stuff, hospitals, police stations, satellites. Oh my God, the whole atmosphere, every urban environment is so saturated with microwaves that they're actually extremely dangerous places to be for any length of time. Then there's a couple of more blogs that tell about some of our creative work. Cryo-Now is our blog about our films. And the Brink-Jeff Phillips is about our music. like I said, I've used the name the Brink for myself in musical form since 1985. We are on the brink. I'm not sure of what, but hopefully we're on the brink of a massive awakening. We're on the brink, hopefully, of people seizing the helm of their own creativity and re-navigating their own process, because this can only happen individually. Advertising and psychological warfare can happen from the one to the many, but true spiritual change and conscious re-navigation of the human process does not occur through one source telling millions of people what to do or think. It's got to happen as an internal revolution beginning at the level of the individual. Each person has to realize that their creativity is immense, that it does matter, that in real time, every person, even when they're asleep, but more when they're awake, in real time, everyone's brain-mind system is broadcasting out their thoughts and feelings and what's meaningful to them into the, what you might call the collective noosphere of humanity, which is really not separate from the whole noosphere or consciousness of the whole planet and all the other beings here. So we're really a part of this web of life and consciousness, but we're acting as if we're sort of this like mutated Frankenstein monster species that's running crazy. We're deluded. We're grossly deluded by our own inaccurate beliefs about ourselves. We've called ourselves man the wise. What kind of name is that? It's like that's asking for it to go crazy and be an asshole and tear up the planet by calling ourselves man the wise, because it's obvious that a species that's fouling its own nest and actually not only destroying its planet but targeting each other with our most advanced forms of technology. And you've got stuff like countries attacking other little countries and just blowing them up, and countries, big powerful countries, going and blowing up other countries just to get their oil, but they don't call it aggression. They call it humanitarian liberation. We're going to go and bring them freedom and democracy. And see, this kind of stuff, people watch all this shit on the news and they go like, But you know, we're all, every one of us that's alive now is responsible for what our species is doing. And so you can't go around pointing the finger and say, look at those assholes over there, they're fucking everything up. No. It's us. It's got to be us, because there is no them. It's all humans that are doing all this stuff.